Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I am going to recap and explain 2022's Oscar Best Picture winning film, called CODA. Ruby Rossi is a senior in high school and the only hearing member of her deaf family. Her family included her father Frank, mother Jackie, and older brother Leo. She used to work on her father's fishing boat with her father and brother and enjoyed singing. She translates for her entire family and for their business to the normal hearing people on the docks. Normal people used to cheat this family on price by taking advantage of their disadvantage. Leo always wanted to sell their fish directly. Meanwhile, Ruby spends her days at school with her best friend Gertie, where some of the other kids make fun of her for smelling like fish and for having a deaf family. Ruby had a crush on a guy named Miles. Hence when she saw him signing up for choir, she also enrolls herself. After school, her parents pick her up in their truck with the music blasting, embarrassing Ruby. She accompanies her parents to a doctor's appointment. She was totally embarrassed in translating her parents' jock itch. The doctor orders them not to have sex for 2 weeks. By the look of it, they seemed not okay with it. As the family has dinner together, Leo swipes on Tinder. Choir class begins. The teacher, Mr. Villalobos, asks each student to sing the happy birthday song, so that he can assess their vocal parts. When it's Ruby's turn, she becomes too nervous and emotional and runs out of the room. She goes to the water cliff and sings by herself. Since nobody ever sang that song to her, she was a little bit sad as well. When she returns home, she saw her parents arguing over money, having credit cards being declined and bills mounting. Meanwhile, at the docks, all the fishermen are told that they are going to have to pay $800 a day out of pocket for federal observers to come to make sure they are following all their regulations, deeply frustrating all the fishermen who say they can't afford it. Back at school, Ruby goes back to Mr. Villalobos and tries to explain her situation. She says, "When I was little, people made fun of my talking. I was nervous." Later, Mr. Villalobos finally hears Ruby sing and is very impressed. He eventually chooses her to sing a duet at the fall concert and pairs her with Miles. He instructs them to practice together. At the docks, Ruby finds that Leo is selling the fish for less than they are worth and yells at him about it. She runs into her father outside smoking weed. At school, Mr. Villalobos has Ruby and Miles sing their duet. They were totally out of sync as they practiced separately, not together. Ruby's social life was awful. She never had male friends. Mr. Villalobos tells them to practice together. They both kind of agree. Mr. Villalobos asks Ruby what her plans were after graduating. He was coaching Miles for Beakley's audition. Ruby says she isn't going to college because her family can't afford it. Mr. Villalobos asks her how she feels when she sings. Ruby signs her response. "Since I don't know sign language, I am assuming she was filled with never-ending joy." Mr. Villalobos offers to tutor her to prepare her for the audition but warns her not to waste his time. Ruby accepts it. When Ruby tells her mother about this, she doesn't seem excited, hurting Ruby's feelings. Meanwhile, Leo had the idea to start a fisheries cooperative for their sales. But Frank thought it would never work as the other fisherman thinks he was a joke. Angry about this, Leo goes with the fishermen to their local bar, but can't really mix with them. When someone spills their drink on him, he gets into a bar fight. Gertie, who works at the bar, talks to him. After chatting via text, the two end up making out in a back room. Miles comes over to Ruby's house for the duet practice. Slightly awkward and not knowing where to look, the two sing back to each other. It was going well when interrupted by the sounds of Frank and Jackie having sex. Ruby stops them. She felt humiliated. She felt further humiliated when their parents forced them to a sex talk. The humiliation got exaggerated when Ruby was forced to translate it for Miles. At school, other kids begin making fun of Ruby about her parents. Somehow the news spread like wildfire. I guess thanks to chatting apps. She angrily confronts Miles for spreading. Miles insists that he just told one person, but Ruby was pissed off. At practice, Ruby works on her piece, Both Sides Now, by Joni Mitchell. She was a little tense and sad. Mr. Villalobos encourages her to get angry and sing with her emotions. A counsel addressed the fisherman about the observer's issue. Frank ends up standing. He lashes out his anger, which Ruby translates. He shows his middle finger to the council and decides to use Leo's idea. He says they're starting their own cooperative and tells everyone to bring their catch to them. He promises them to sell it for double. At home, Jackie was horrified by this idea. Leo says they can finally be part of the fishing community, but Jackie says they aren't and will never be, since they can't communicate with them. Frank points to Ruby as their way of communicating. Ruby begins working constantly on the new business, doing all the translating and keeping up her very busy practice schedule. Jackie tries to communicate with the other wives but feels left out. Mr. Villalobos gets angry with Ruby for being late many times. He wanted her to take this seriously. He warns her if she is late one more time, he will be done with her. Miles. At this new family business venture, a news crew arrived to interview Frank and Jackie. Ruby was needed here for translation, but she was getting late for her practice. Jackie yells at her that she can't leave. She accuses Ruby of abandoning them. Ruby stays and translates for the interview, then rushes to Mr. Villalobos's house. But he doesn't answer the door. He was done with Ruby for not being committed. The next day, at school, she goes to see him for an apology. But he refuses to work with her. He had enough. At home, Ruby tells her family about how much she loves singing. She had a big fight with the family about being their interpreter for life, and how she felt exhausted. Later, Jackie and Frank argue about Ruby going to college, with Jackie not wanting her to go, wondering what if she's an awful singer. She says she doesn't want her baby to go, and Frank says she was never a baby. Angry with her family, the next day Ruby doesn't go to work. The observer shows up to monitor Frank's boat, while Ruby and Miles hang out and swim together. They eventually kiss. In the middle of the ocean, the observer started asking a few questions. Frank realized this and wrote her death in her diary. A few minutes later, the Coast Guard started chasing this boat as it entered the international waters. Neither Frank nor Leo hear the sirens. The Coast Guard forcibly entered the boat and arrested Frank. Frank's license got suspended, and he was levied with huge fines. He had no money to pay back without getting back on the water. He was allowed back on the water only if he hired a hearing deckhand. Jackie says they can't afford to hire one at this point. Frank says Ruby could be their permanent deckhand. All this fiasco was levied on Ruby's head. Ruby becomes incredibly emotional about blaming it on her. When Frank says he'll sell the business, Ruby agrees to give up on college. She kind of lied that she was excited. Leo sensed this, he gets angry and stormed out. Jackie buys Ruby a nice dress for her concert and explains to Ruby that Leo just feels left out. Ruby says if anything she's the one out. She asks Jackie if she ever wishes she was deaf. Jackie tells her, when I found out you could hear, my heart sank. I was afraid you wouldn't be able to communicate with me, but I was wrong. You loved me. Ruby participate in the graduation function. The family can't hear Ruby perform, but Gertie tells them she's doing good. Afterward, Mr. Villalobos introduces himself. In an attempt to say nice to meet you in sign, he accidentally says fuck you. He tells them they're making a terrible mistake not letting Ruby go to college. Ruby doesn't translate this part. But Frank sensed Mr. Villalobos' part. After the concert, Frank asks Ruby what her song was about and asks her to sing it for him. The next day, the whole family takes Ruby to her Berkeley audition. The family is told they can't go into the audition room with Ruby. The audition begins and Ruby realizes she left her sheet music. She's unsure how to go on when Mr. Villalobos enters and offers to accompany her. She starts off a little rough and Mr. Villalobos messes up the piano on purpose to let her start again. Her family enters up on the top row of the theater, and Ruby sings, "Both Sides Now," while signing the words. Everyone enjoys the music. Frank trains a new hearing deckhand and the business kicks off. Jackie even bonds with the other wives. Miles learns some sign language. Ruby gets into Berkeley and says goodbye to her family as Gertie drives her away. She signs this. It's a three-letter phrase that uses the thumb, forefinger, and little finger to depict the letters I, L, and Y, which stand for I love you. By crossing her middle finger with her index finger, Ruby included the letter R into the phrase, making it I, R, L, Y, or I really love you. With this, the film ends. This is one of the most heart-touching films in recent years. It depicts the challenges hearing-impaired people face on day-to-day basis. How selfish society takes them for granted. The moral of the movie is with sheer determination, hard work, and love one can overcome any challenges. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, then please give it a like. Thanks for watching. Take care.